Welcome to Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob and Jeff here to have our weekly hit on a Monday after another win for the Seahawks. 3 wins in a row. There's so much to talk about from the Jets game and the fallout of all of that, Jeff. But some news has just broken in the last couple of minutes that Laviska Shenault has been cut by the Seahawks. One of 2 struggling kick returners for the Seahawks. The interesting thing is that the other guy, as of right now, D. Williams, is still on the roster. So give us your immediate reaction to that news.
I was hoping there would be a move after that game yesterday. I would have cut both of them. I think D is. I've been terrified every D return since the first game, really, and just his sloppiness. And he's had some good returns lately, but it's just been. I think he's been warranted to be released, and I don't know what he has on these guys, but maybe his age, maybe his contract, but maybe they want to get rid of 2 returners at once. But yesterday was one of the worst special teams performances I've ever seen in my life. There was a play where D fumbles the ball, and Shenault is just standing there looking at D. Williams. The ball is literally right under him. If he looks down, he picks up the ball easily. He's staring at the guy on the ground, doesn't touch the ball, and then he bobbles the 2. Yeah, I thought both of them had played at a level yesterday that was warranting of a release. It's been a long thing for D, at least. Shenault at least had a kick return for a touchdown, but the special teams performance in the return game yesterday should have lost them the game. They're lucky that the Jets were inept enough that they didn't, but the Seahawks had to do something. A lot of people were taking it out on Jay Harbaugh. I was one of those people, but I think a lot of those fumbles early on, that's not coaching. That's the execution of the players. You either catch the ball or you don't.
I think D. Williams looks terrified every time he has to feel the tip. And, I've seen this comment, and I'm going to put it up here from David. It says, to Shenault's credit, he did hustle on the kickoff touchdown return. And I noticed that. So even though he obviously had awful fumbles, on the kick that the Jets actually scored from, he is flying back, like desperately trying to make the tackle, launches himself at the returner at the end, and almost makes that tackle. And I thought, well, fair play to him. At least he's hustling there. He's had a bad game catching the football. But if there was one of the 2 who had to go, I would have thought it would be D. Williams, because I have no confidence in him whatsoever, Jeff. And they've cut Shenault. Okay, fine. They've made their move. I really don't want to see D. Williams returning any kicks in the next game. And the thing that bothers me is the guy who scored for the Jets is just on their practice squad right now. Like they elevated him to kick that return, and he's got something like 4 returns in his career now. Go and find somebody like that. Go and find somebody who is explosive, who can catch a football. And if you can't find anybody, then it's time to just turn to Tyler Lockett or Jackson Smith-Njigba or whoever on your roster who you can rely on to catch the darn football and just either take a knee or get it back to the 30. It's as simple as that.
Did you see the sideline yesterday, the shot where JSN goes up to Jay Harbaugh and starts pointing at his chest? Did you catch that during the game?
I've heard somebody talk about that today.
I caught it live during the game, and I started giggling like a hyena because I was in a state of, I don't want to talk about the state I was in at that point, but when JSN is on the sidelines pleading to be put in as the kick returner, it's pretty telling of what the team thinks of these guys. And you're right. The thing with, like, everyone's always like, well, go trade for an offensive lineman or something like that. Like, you can't find offensive linemen in the middle of the season, but returners, that's a position you can find in the middle of the season. Like, I just saw the Browns put Kadarius Toney on the active roster for today. Like, they could take him off the practice squad. I'm not saying him specifically. He's got his own share of issues. But that's a position where there are guys in the league on practice squads, or there are guys in the league that are available. And it's a spot you can upgrade. So I hope the Seahawks are aggressive with trying to fix that problem because, yeah, they got a high leverage game coming up this weekend. Basically every game for the next couple of weeks is pretty important. If you can't trust your returners, especially at some of these weather games that you're not going to be able to kick out the end zone as easily, it's a problem. And yesterday, again, I thought the week before I saw Washington and Dallas had like the worst special teams game I've ever seen. And the Seahawks topped it. And I didn't think that was even possible. And the return unit was just atrociously bad. So, yeah, I kudos to the Seahawks for cutting Shenault. I would like to see them kind of revamp that whole group moving forward.
If the Seahawks just hold their business down on special teams, Jeff, what do you think the score of that game was yesterday? I mean, the Jets didn't score a point in the second half. Like, that could have been a really quite enjoyable win. And it feels as if special teams made it unbearably close, and people have said it was a drunk game. I mean, it definitely did feel that way, but it needn't have been anywhere near as close as it was.
No, that swung the entire game. The second touchdown of the game came off a fumbled kick. They gave up the kick return touchdown. I guess the pick six came from a field goal, so maybe that reversed. I mean, off the fumbled punt too. But the Jets really only went down the field and scored once. They had the kick return. The other one was a short field after a fumble, and then scored in the second half. So they basically had one touchdown drive the whole game. So that was basically could have been like a 24-7 kind of game where the special teams unit, and I'm sure we're going to talk about the other unit on the team, made that, but the special teams specifically handed them essentially 14 points. They did block an extra point, but they also got an extra point blocked as well. So you had things at every level. And that's where I guess you can point to the coach. You can say like the sloppiness of the group overall. But just the amount of kicks they dropped, it was comical. If you were an outsider watching that game, you would have looked like the Seahawks are one of the dumbest teams you've ever seen. They looked like a comedy of errors. But yeah, that would have been a blowout if not for that. That was the only thing that kept the Jets in the game.
Well, let's talk about something a bit more positive. The defense, Jeff, has been fantastic again. You know, this is Mike McDonald mentions the word stack or stacked every single press conference. They have stacked performances together now. Leonard Williams in the last 2 weeks has looked like possibly the best defensive player in the NFL in current form. I mean, just how uplifted is this? Because I think a few weeks ago it would have been legitimately fair to wonder whether Mike McDonald was the right appointment, because he just wasn't working, was it, on defense? And you start to worry a little bit. And now this has been a really reassuring 4 games, including the Rams loss as well, where the defense at least gives you that bit of confidence. You think, okay, they're heading in the right direction with this. And again, I'll just say what I think you and I both agree on. I don't really care how this season finishes up. You know, they could make the playoffs, not make the playoffs, win a playoff game, not win a playoff game. If they can carry this on to the end of the season on defense, at least you can go into the offseason thinking, right, fix the O-line. You've got some big decisions to make, but ultimately the defense gives you a chance to be very competitive next year.
Yeah, and that's by far the best development of the team right now, and it's been really encouraging. When people were like, well, their linebackers suck, and if they fix the linebacker unit, everyone will be fine. It's like, well, they're the worst run defense in the league, and they don't look like anyone else. So it was getting pretty hard to build a case for, like, what is McDonald good at when you combine the sloppiness of the other 2 units? And the whole thing has just come together, where now you have all 3 units working as one, and they've been able to play really good run defense. They've been able to get to third down consistently. And you've seen bright spots at all 3 levels. And really, there's times where last week especially, they looked like Baltimore. Like last year, if you watch Baltimore this year, they don't look as near the same on defense. And the cool thing with them is we've seen different players, and the guys you need to be the best players on the team, Leonard Williams, Devin Witherspoon, Ernest Jones, those guys have really emerged as the guys. Like Leonard Williams is playing, I think you had the tweet yesterday where it was just, this is the defensive lineman we've been waiting for years. It's so true. Like last week and this week was the best Seahawks defensive performances since like the Jadeveon Clowney game against San Francisco, like lives in like lore. We've gotten that kind of play back-to-back weeks, and honestly, I think if you're based on how he's played the last 2 weeks and you look at the full body of work, I think there's a pretty good case he's probably like the second best defensive player of the year candidate in the whole NFL. And we've talked about like the lack of blue chips, and then Julian Love has been really good. I thought Julian Love was excellent yesterday. Even the scene where he's like yelling at Woolen on the sideline after he completely botched the zone defense there. Love blowing up that screen pass on second down. And the cool thing is, like, these are not like run-of-the-mill players. Like, yeah, Aaron Rodgers is diminished. He's not the same guy. But what they've done against Matthew Stafford, Brock Purdy, whatever version of Aaron Rodgers, and Kyler Murray, who's played a pretty good game again yesterday against a tough defense. They have made these guys confused. They've thrown different looks at them. It's been really impressive. It's not like the beginning of the year where they were beating up Skylar Thompson and Bo Nix his first game and Jacoby Brissett, who's now on the bench. These are pretty quality quarterbacks, and again, they're going to play a couple of good. Darnold's playing well. Jordan Love is coming up. They have another Kyler game, and then they play the 49ers, not the 49ers, the Rams again. So we're going to kind of learn more, but it's now 4 straight games where things have looked the same. It's built together. You see why Mike Macdonald, what he brings to the table, and that side of the ball has been very encouraging.
I'm really pleased you brought up Julian Love as well, because I just think he was really underrated with the way that he's been playing, and he gets a bit of attention when he makes a play, but the Leonard Williams, Devin Witherspoon, Ernest Jones Love kind of pushes him to one side a little bit. And Love, there was the play last weekend where he covered so much ground and he caught the ball by the sideline, but it was just out of bounds. You think, wow, that's really quick. You mentioned the screen pass. There were numerous plays yesterday where you just noticed Julian Love. And this is the thing now is you've got Leonard Williams on the defensive line with the supporting cast. Like one of Williams' sacks was created by Boye Mafe. So Boye Mafe does not get anything on the stat sheet other than maybe a pressure, but ultimately the two work together. Then you've got Ernest Jones at the second level. You've got Julian Love. You've got Devin Witherspoon. And just that accountability. As bad as the play was by Woolen, who just couldn't be arsed in that, to actually go and close down the guy, the ball carrier, it was almost worth it, Jeff. One, because the Seahawks still ended up winning the game. And two, just to see Julian Love getting after him. And that puts something on tape so the coaches can get after him and maybe go and have a word with Jaron Reed and say, you have a word with him as well, because that is frustrating. But ultimately, you have somebody who cares. You've got somebody who's going to go up to Tariq Woolen and say, get your arse in the game, mate. And I just really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed watching the defense yesterday, Jeff. The game was stressful. It was unnecessarily stressful. But the defense is fun. They're physical. They're changing games with the way they play at the line of scrimmage. And that's, on a defensive side of thing, I think all we've been asking for years. And now, after years of terrible defense, this is the exact time of year when everything would be falling apart usually. It's actually getting stronger.
And if you remember, like, the conversations that me and you were having after the Bills game and after the 49ers first game, who are the leaders on this team? Like, who gives a shit? And honestly, that 49ers game and the Bills game, where it looked like the Steelers game last year, where they're just like, and Leonard Williams even made a comment, like, once they kind of understood the defense, he saw a different look in people's eyes. And that's why I had the same feeling as you yesterday. That Julian Love scene, like, really spoke to me, because we had that conversation a month or two ago where it looked like no one gave a shit. That Giants game was the worst example of it I've ever seen. And I was worried a little about this game where I'm like, what if they just show up and bite into themselves? And the defense really played with fire. Like, most of their stuff came because, frankly, Devontae Adams was kind of beating up on Josh Jobe early in the game. And he looked really good for a while. And then they kind of slowed that down. And their whole offense kind of fell apart after that. And you got to give credit to Devontae. That looked really good at the beginning. But, yeah, I don't know what's happened, whether it's the defense clicking, whether it's switching out the linebackers, some of them who didn't really give a shit. Jerome Baker in Tennessee looks like he doesn't give a shit. And the energy and, like, Leonard Williams and his fire. But, yeah, now we're seeing guys that do care. Now we're seeing leaders emerge. The Julian Love. And I think Julian Love is, like, yesterday he played an all-pro level to me, not just a good game. That was an all-pro level game. I know PFF was having like 85. I thought he was unbelievable. And we've talked about all the money they spent at safety, and how many times have we said that about their safety room. And Kobe Bryant keeps playing solid games, and all of a sudden, that extension, I see what they were thinking there.
Well, we've criticized plenty of things that John Schneider has done over the years. That was a really good decision. They got ahead of the game with Julian Love, didn't they? And you have to give them credit for that. The Leonard Williams trade, and people were sending me messages yesterday saying, you hated the Leonard Williams trade. And it was like, no, I've always liked Leonard Williams. I wrote an article last summer, July and August, saying Leonard Williams would be a really good player to trade for. It was the process of trading a second rounder for a rental. And the same with Ernest Jones. It was never about the player. It's always about the process. And I feel like Seattle could have done a better job with those negotiations. But, that doesn't mean that you dislike the player. You didn't want them to acquire the player or anything like that. It's just the negotiating side of it. And I run a draft blog. So you're going to end up talking about the way that they spend their picks even via trade. So that was what it is. The defense playing very, very well. The special teams we've touched on, Jeff. Let's talk a bit about the offense. We could probably spend the rest of the time talking about the offense. Let me just ask, how do you feel about the offense after watching that game?
Petrified. Anytime they get into a short yardage situation, it feels like they make the complete wrong call. And it's now been a month of games, starting with that Rams game. They couldn't get the yard. The Niners game, they couldn't get the yard. What was the game last week? The Cardinals situation, they struggled. They had a lot of points come from defense. This game again, that goal line sequence was just emblematic of what's been going on for the last month and why, and the fact that they never QB sneak once. They throw at Sauce Gardner on a slant route. It just, to me, that summed up everything that's going on right now. They don't know who they are. They seem to make the wrong decision every time. And I heard Robert Mays say this today. He said, other than Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, Kenneth Walker is playing as good as any running back. And the fact that they can't run the ball at all with him, it's pretty telling. And I think, the offensive line, we know their issues. They're not good enough. But it just seems like they have no idea who they are right now. It seemed there was I don't know if you've seen this, there's a clip of Mike McDonald on the sideline yesterday after they threw the ball in that slant being, why did you throw there? We're all thinking that. And then the 4th and goal, and even the drive they scored to win the game, there were a bunch of flags, most of them legitimate. I know DJ Reed didn't agree, but I thought most of them were legitimate. They were bailed out from, that 4th and 1, they do the rollout and whip it down the field. It just seems like they're so lost. And me and you have been talking about the Ryan Grubb thing. I think yesterday to come and stamp the thing down. This is just not working. The problem is they can't run the ball. Their wide receiver, JSN's having it great, but they're putting more guys in coverage. DK Metcalf has not been himself since he's come back from the injuries. He got down the field a couple times yesterday, but the beginning of the year, he was really taking over some games. He hasn't done that. Tyler Lockett looks kind of toast. Noah Fant doesn't look great. There's not much there. And it's if JSN's not creating, it looks uncomfortable. And frankly, I didn't think Geno played very well yesterday. And I know some people disagree with me, but the wind was an issue. He missed that deep ball that ended up getting him down to the 1, but he's got to get that ball in stride. The throw to Fant, people blame Noah Fant. He could have caught that. That was a bad throw. And I thought he looked jumpy. He made some ridiculous throws, that 4th down off his back foot. But again, Geno takes that sack in the red zone and he's spinning around. And it's at this point, this is just who he is. We can't the O-line obviously isn't ideal, but if you're a quarterback that makes a massive and has brain cramps in the red zone every week, it's just who you are at this point. And again, Geno's doing a good job. But I didn't think he played particularly good yesterday, and I thought he looked jumpy. And when you combine all of that, it's an offense that gives you just very little confidence. And I thought they were going to lose yesterday because I just thought with the Jets corners and Quinnen Williams with that rookie guard starting, I thought the game would be a real struggle. And they did more offensively in the end, but I just don't think I can get that sequence of the 7 or 8 plays out of my head and how bad it was. And what we've seen the last month, I'm on the impression that Ryan Grubb can't be brought back. And maybe I don't love the idea of starting again with a new offense next year, but I think I've seen enough.
Yeah. There's so much to get into, isn't there? First of all, with the Geno Smith thing, I thought the thing that frustrated me more than anything, Jeff, was that sprint left that ended up being the sack on the 4th down on the goal line, is that everybody runs to the left. If you watch it, every route is running to the left. He sets off to run to the left. it's covered. And that in that situation, you either have to just accept the Jets have made a better play than you have in that, or have read the call and they've covered it, and you either try and make a play or you throw it out the back of the end zone and you say to Aaron Rodgers, all 41 years of him today, go on then, you work from the 1 yard line. And, that could end up in a safety. Anything could happen there because the Jets offense was not very good. But to try and turn and run to the right where there is nobody running a route and then just lose 20 yards of field position on fourth down. Even once you get to a point, there has to be a point in your head where you go, I have to throw this out the back of the end zone. Like, it's just not working. And he took a huge sack. It's the kind of sack that Cam Ward takes at his worst. And that's all I was thinking. I was like, why are you going backward? What are you doing? Like, just don't make that decision. And it was so bad. But then the plays in front of it, like the play calling, like a fade to DK Metcalf when he's just run down the field has made a huge play for you, which you've underthrown to him. He gets the grab. He looked tired, and you're throwing him a fade, and you threw it as if there was two DK Metcalf stood on each of the shoulders, they wouldn't have come down with that fade. You then have just the standard runs up the middle. You've got a spider Y2 banana to the tight end, which is off target. And all I kept thinking of, I mentioned this in the stream yesterday, Jeff, was watching the Lions on Thanksgiving, and they fake the pitch to Jahmyr Gibbs and then throw it across the middle to Sam Laporta. And Jared Goff he's celebrating because they thought, we've spent all week working on that one play for that one opportunity to call this play in the red zone. And he called it, and he loved every second of the fact that they'd worked on something. And you could tell there was an extra bit of bite in that celebration from Goff. And I can't help but think, why, when you know that your red zone is a massive issue at the minute, and it's been an issue for a long time, why have you not just found something this week that can get you a touchdown like that? Just something a little bit creative, something's a little bit different, that you go to it, you've worked in it, you've perfected it in the week. Instead, it looks as if they just ran the same old. If you had to say, right, Jeff, you've got 10 seconds, name some plays that you see in the red zone on the 1 yard line. Run up the middle, fade to big receiver, spider Y2 banana. Like, yep, that's it. Your 10 seconds are up. Like, that's just what they're doing. They were just running, as you've often said, like they're just running NFL plays. Like, that's just what it is. It's as if Ryan Grubb's just gone to the very, very basic play calling there. So Gino's a bit to blame, and Gino's not been a good red zone. Hugh Millen keeps mentioning that he's been a really bad red zone quarterback under two coordinators now, and some of it's not Gino. It is the play calling, it is the execution, it is the offensive line, but he's been a bad red zone quarterback for too long now. The play calling was bad, and then the offensive line is bad. If you can't get the push up the middle for 1 yard over and over again, game after game after game, it is a massive issue. But the worst thing about this, Jeff, is just as the defense is coming to a crescendo where you go, I'm excited about it, it's looking fantastic, all the offense needs to do is be average, be okay. And it feels week to week, it just gets a little bit worse every single week. And I hate the idea that what we're going to have now is that the defense is going to keep getting better, but the offense is going to keep regressing, and that's going to prevent us from having a really interesting end to this season, or perhaps not max out what the defense is doing.
Yeah, that's the worst part. That's the worst part, because if you had a functional offense right now, or even a good offense, this would be a hell of a team. Like, they've won 3 games in a row with a scattered, almost dysfunctional offense that can't. And they have playmakers. They have talent. They shouldn't be an offense this inept. And sure, the offensive line is an issue. Like, Laken Tomlinson was awful yesterday. I didn't see all the grades, but PFF's been a little weird to me. Some of their grading this year, but yeah, like, the center is kind of what he is. He's fine, but he's nothing special. Abe Lucas is up and down. He's still coming back. Charles Cross kind of is back to his career norms. His moments he looks good, and he gets exposed against speed rushers or power rushers, and they don't have the talent up front. But this, yeah, like, that's the problem with this team. Like, it just feels like Gino either has to be like Superman for them to move the ball, and JSN's playing excellent too. JSN has been, unfortunately, this is kind of getting left in the dark because of how much of a struggle, like, that route JSN runs in the 4th and 6. to get wide open down the field there was pretty unbelievable. But it's just they don't, like, you watch so many of the successful teams. Detroit's the best example. Even Pittsburgh right now, they have a very clear formula. Obviously, they have a much better offensive line, but really the Seahawks' only like superpower is their ability to pass the ball with their receivers. I don't know how good Lockett is right now. DK Metcalf is a flawed player. He's still very good, but he's a flawed player. Like his again, like Sauce Gardner took him out of the game for the whole first half. His size is not an advantage enough times. Like most of his big plays are because of his speed, and he's winning down the field. But I heard the athletic guys compare him to Jalen. He said he's more Jalen Waddle than Calvin Johnson, which is kind of accurate. Like, so right now they're just kind of scattered. And last year's offense was tough to watch. I think they're worse. And I'm not saying I want Shane Waldron back or anything like that, but I think they're a lot of the same issues inside the red zone, inside short yardage. But I think the Ryan Grubb thing, and that's the problem. Complementary football is about everything tying together. And that's why Mike McDonald wants a team that can run the ball. Makes it easier on your defense. You can be a physical team. It's really, look at Philly, how they're playing right now. The whole thing's tied together. They've now become a Super Bowl contender. They're not throwing it all over the yard. Jalen Hurts isn't even a great thrower of the football, but they can run the ball. They have a good line, and they play really good defense with Vic Fangio. And now they're 10-2 and whatever. And they beat Baltimore yesterday. And Ryan Grubb's best plays are downfield shots. He's really creative with some decisions, but again, it honestly feels like every time they get into short yardage, they make either the wrong decision or they just completely give away what they're doing. Like, let's see how it gets first and goal from the 1. And they throw the fade route at Sauce Gardner, who's one of the biggest and longest corners in the NFL, or they just run the ball up the middle, like you said. It's like I have to run NFL plays. It was like one of the things we've learned in the NFL, one of the easiest formations to run in is when you spread the receivers out, so you take guys out of the box so you can run to the outside, you can run up the middle. There's much more running lanes, and they never do that. They never do that. Luckily, the Charbonnet play was blocked really well. I saw LeMaya pancake a guy on that play, and that they've hit on some of those lately, but that's sequence from the goal line where they don't even try to QB sneak. They don't even try it. It just seems like they're so lost in short yardage, and anytime they get to 3rd and 1 or near the goal line, the closer they get to the goal line, the worse of an offense they are, which is all backwards. And I know that was like a Russell Wilson thing too, but they have a lot more talent on this team to be an offense that looks this inept series to series.
Well, the great thing about 2011, when the defense was really coming together and starting to look like something, looking like the LOB was being created, was that you could always rely on Marshawn Lynch to run the ball. When you got into the red zone, you would have a good chance of getting touchdowns because of Marshawn Lynch. And they just don't have anything now. They don't have anything they can go to in this red zone. And if you are going to be a great team, you've got to be able to convert those opportunities. And that could have been, again, special teams is bad. I think if the offense had played better yesterday, that could have, again, they could have won it at a canter, even with the special teams issues. Can I tell you some statistics, Jeff? I don't know how many people are aware of this, but when Charles Cross gave up the sack from Will McDonald yesterday, I thought, I want to see his numbers. I've not gone and had a look at his numbers for a little while. And do you know that Charles Cross has given up the 3rd most hurries in the NFL at tackle? He is... Sorry, I'll correct myself. 2nd most, because he's joint 2nd with our good friend Trevor Penning with the New Orleans Saints. Yikes. He is 2 hurries off DeMontre Jacobs, who is leading the league on 28. Charles Cross has given up 26 hurries. It's not a good number. Pressures, he has given up 35 pressures, 2nd most in the entire NFL at tackle, tied with Nicholas Petit-Frere at Tennessee and Terrence Steele with the Cowboys. Again, poor old DeMontre Jacobs leading the way with 41 and does not look as if he's going to get caught. He plays for the New England Patriots. But, to be 2nd for pressures, 2nd for hurries, and you could say, well, at least he's not giving up sacks. He's in the top 10 for sacks. He's given up 5 sacks now. So he's tied 9th for sacks. So what you often hear is people say, well, it's the interior O-line. The tackles are great. Charles Cross is very good. I think people need to revise that. Charles Cross is okay.
Yeah.
Charles Cross is not bad. He's not, I wouldn't say he's particularly good. I think there are athletic qualities to him. He's not a liability, I don't think, despite those numbers I've read out. But he is not somebody I would ever rely on. And he's certainly not somebody at this point, Jeff, that I'm thinking I'm rushing to go and pay him an absolutely massive contract in the offseason, 3 years into his NFL career. He has still got to get stronger. He has got to become more dominant. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I've always had doubts about him as an elite tackle. I thought he was a second-round talent coming into the draft. He has not taken the steps that make you think he is great. And perhaps he will fare better if they get a better left guard and a better center and a better right guard. Maybe everybody will improve from that. It's distinctly possible. But I just don't think we should be giving Charles Cross a pass because those numbers are not very good. And he was beat way too easy by Will McDonald on that sack yesterday. And then for the rest of the interior, Jeff, I just thought that was another step back. Like they couldn't get any push last week. And this week it was the same. It was torturous to watch them try and run the ball. Credit to Mookie Alexander at Field Goals, who put this stat up on Twitter earlier, that they've had their running backs have combined for an 100-yard performance twice. Week 1 against the Broncos, week 3 against the Dolphins. That's it. Like for a team that sets out to run, because Mike McDonald says that, that's not good enough. And there's no push. It is Kenneth Walker is working 3 times as hard as any running back in the NFL to get a freaking yard at this point. Not to get a 100-yard game, to get a yard on an individual play. It's not good enough. And that is a talent thing, but it goes back to that tweet Brock Hewitt put out last week. They've got to do a better job to be more creative, to help out this offensive line, to come up with some plays, to get things moving in this running game. It's just not good enough.
No, it's not. And yeah, like it's a position you could be a little creative with. You can coach around some liabilities. Obviously, like you can't make them into a top 5 O-line, but I think you hit on a lot of the issues. Like Cross in the first week of the year, like looked like a different player. He got like the 94 grade at PFF and things like that, and he just shut out a side of the ball. We have not seen anything like that since, and there was a lot of talk that he had taken a step, and he looks like he's had a fine year, but again, he didn't take that step forward that it seemed like everyone was talking about and we saw in week 1. It's a lot of more of the same, but the Seahawks are in a tricky spot where they have a lot of holes, really left guard, center, right guard on this group to fill. Abe Lucas is looking better. I'm hoping that he can sustain his health, but I think when Lucas is healthy, he's a better player than Cross is at this point. And he just has that edge that Cross doesn't have. And a lot of left tackles don't have that, to be fair. Like they're more finesse, pass blocking types. But he gets beat the hurries numbers is very telling. And yeah, the interior line is just, Timmy had a really good graded game against San Francisco. But the more we look at San Francisco, they're just weak inside. Like they lost Javon Hargrave. Now Bosa's out. You saw what Buffalo did to them last week. You saw what Green Bay did to them the week before. I think it might be more about that than anything else. Arizona's been very aggressive as the blitz team. They gave them trouble last week. I think they're going to be in for some trouble again. They're very creative in how they attack. And I thought Laken Tomlinson, there was a play yesterday where they run. I can't remember if it was an outside run or a reverse or a screen. I can't remember what it was. But Laken Tomlinson's in space. And it is such an easy play. There's one guy they have to block, and it's probably like an 8 to 10 yard gain. There's one, I think it was a linebacker or maybe it was a linebacker coming across the field. And for Laken Tomlinson, that should just be a very easy block. And I'm watching it almost in slow motion, and Tomlinson completely misses the guy. They have all the O-line positioned perfectly, and the linebacker just gets around him, makes the tackle for a 1 yard gain. And it was just like, my God, like, how do you not make that block? And there's times where, like, Quinnen Williams is pushing him around, and I get that. But, like, to be in space and not be able to block anyone, and it was just such an easy block for an offensive lineman. And he's so far from it, and it's just like they brought in a discount bottom-of-the-barrel player, and they're getting a bottom-of-the-barrel return. And you kind of reap what you sow there, and it's like, you watch these teams that have functional guards. Not like Tampa Bay finds these guys in free agency every year, it feels like. And it's hard to watch these guys because they're just not doing the basics of it at all. And like Walker looked like he was going to break a couple yesterday. And it's just like every time you think something good might happen, either there's a flag or someone screws up a block or someone gets around someone. And they're so close, it feels like, to breaking one of these. And like it feels like Ken Walker hasn't scored in weeks. And like the fact that they can't score with this guy down at the line of scrimmage and they can't run the ball at all, it's got to be eating McDonald up because it's such a big part of like completing the circle of who he is.
Well, I don't want to make this a big Charles Cross thing, but someone has asked in the comments, what are Charles Cross's numbers since Abe Lucas came back into the lineup? And I had a look, and I think it's quite interesting. So this is according to PFF, of course, and so, take this information with a pinch of salt if you think that's best. Since Abe Lucas, so for the season, Charles Cross has 5 sacks. According to this, 4 of them have come in the last 3 games. So since Abe Lucas has come back into the team, he's given up 4 sacks. So he's actually given up more sacks since Lucas came in. He'd only given up 1 sack the whole season against the Dolphins. And then they played San Francisco, Arizona, New York Jets. He's given up 4 sacks. He's given up 4 hurries on top of that. And he's given up 9 pressures. So he's given up 3 pressures a game. He had 1 game against the Lions where he gave up 10 pressures, which was like a really bad day for him, which is like really pumping up the numbers there on the pressures. But 9 pressures in 3 games is still not a great number. His grade is still somewhat okay. He's something like about 12th or 10th in overall for PFF grade. He hasn't had a game like the Denver game where he was like in the 90s. Ever since then, it's been 70, 73, 65, 67, 82, 67, 63, 75. His last 3 games since Lucas came in, 64.3, 63.6, 66.8. So I'm just saying, they're disappointing numbers from somebody you kind of think, well, at least that position is sorted. It's not. That's a narrative which I think is a bit of a red herring. And I want to come back onto the offensive line in a second overall, but it does sort of make you think, right, so now you've got tackle, but you're not going to get rid of Charles Cross. So he's going to be back next year on his fourth year of his contract. You've got him for at least 2 more years. You probably take the 5th year option. You've got plenty of time to work through this. But I don't think what you do is you go out and rush and sign him in the offseason. But I think you've got to seriously, Jeff, think left guard, center, right guard. You've got to have investments at all of those positions. And it's not just a case of it can't be BJ Finney. It has to be a serious player, a high draft pick, a quality veteran. They have to go for this now. They have to give Ken Walker the chance to go and have a great season in his contract year as well.
Yep.
So if they can do that, then they can be a really good football team with this defense. But until they do that, it's going to be an issue. What I wanted to do before I get to the Super Chats is just come back to something you mentioned earlier, that Mike McDonald sort of, the camera caught him, and Adam noticed this during the game and mentioned it on the stream. I'd not picked it up, and then almost like 5 minutes, really weird, like 5 minutes after we finished our stream, Aaron Levine tweeted the video of it.
Yes.
Of him talking about why, like, he looks as if he's saying, why are we throwing it there? And you can kind of wonder, is he throwing it? Does he mean throwing the kind of throw? Does he mean, why are we throwing it at all at the 1 yard line or whatever? But what I did find really interesting is Brian asked Mike McDonald a question after the game about the sequence in the red zone and saying it was 5 passes inside the 4 yard line, didn't get in. And I was looking at McDonald there. And as that information was being sort of spelled out to Mike McDonald, Jeff, he looked absolutely seething, as if what he was being told was red rag to a bull. I can't believe we did that. And maybe I'm looking into it because I've formed this opinion that I think there's a mismatch in philosophies between the head coach and the offensive coordinator. But I also thought his reaction to that question, a great question, was telling that I don't think they're on the same page.
No, it's hard to see. Like, there was last week where they just had such different answers. We talked about it last Monday. They had such different answers to that one question of whether you need to emphasize the run or not. I don't get the feeling it's working. And we've been on this for what feels like a month now. And I think like that moment, it's just, again, you talk about the questions after the game, but that moment that Adam caught is so emblematic of where they are. The fact that, like, I don't know, are they not situationally game planning for this? Is McDonald staying out of the offensive stuff and leaving it with Grubb completely? But the Seahawks need to get better at situational football. Especially defensively, they've been really good at it, honestly. Offensively, they've been atrocious. And I think we talked about the last month, but it's just been, it's unacceptable to be that ill-prepared for your opponent. That not being, the fact that they had that exchange, I think is so telling of them being on different sides of the ball. I mean, it's different sides, just different pages right now, and it's not a good situation, I don't think, for Grubb. I don't think he fits. I think the fact that I think we talked about is they wanted Arthur Smith, and Arthur Smith was kind of a joke in the fantasy football world because of what he was in a head coach in Atlanta. As an offense coordinator, he's damn good, and he was kind of a laughing stock when Pittsburgh brought him in. And this is why fans a lot of the time don't understand the difference between a head coach and an OC. Totally different jobs. And I wasn't familiar with Ryan Grubb coming. I'm not a UW guy. I watched them in the playoffs. I watched them when I could, but so much of what's going on in the NFL right now, and it's such a cyclical game, is running the football. The best teams in the league, the Eagles, the Bills, the Lions, the emphasis of their team is running the ball. The Ravens, to an extent, the Steelers. You look at it, when the Niners were going, that's the emphasis of their team. The Rams, they all run the football. The Chiefs and win the playoffs with a good running game. And that team that's just lining up and slinging the ball over the field, there's not a lot of examples of that working right now. And again, you've talked about it in so many of your articles, McDonald came from Michigan. And Jim Harbaugh, and like, they run the football. I know they've actually been throwing the ball a lot more lately, but that's just how they play. That's how they complete this physicality of their team. And again, 3rd and goal at the 1 or the 4, and you're throwing a slant route at Sauce Gardner. It's just, I was so mad, and it was like, someone wrote me they were apoplectic. I thought that was a great word. So yeah, it's not meshing. And I'm sure Grubb would be like, have you seen us try to run the ball? Like, we can't do it at all. But I don't know. You have to be better than this.
I think they've got too many weapons to not have anything they can go to.
Yeah.
You know, there has to be something that can be their thing. And if you can't run, then they've got to find a way to pass the ball very, very well. And if they decide they're going to run the ball, they've got to find some wrinkles to get through it. I think he's in trouble. But we've had a question on this. So this is from Hawks fan Matt Man. Is there enough time left in the season for Grubb to leave no doubt in the Seahawks' minds that he should be retained? It's a good question. Thanks, Matt, for that. Really appreciate the super chat. I think there's still time, Jeff, but we're getting worse every week. We're seeing worse from the offense every week. And I think the time is getting to a point now where he has to start delivering. And the fact that I think McDonald's losing his patience. McDonald is pretty good at, is kind of emotionless in his face. Win or lose, he kind of always looks the same. He doesn't look down. He doesn't look super upbeat when they win. He's kind of, his expression never really changes. But I do think that clip that was doing the rounds yesterday, the question and answer about the performance in the red zone, I've not listened to anything he's done today. I mean, I don't think there's any, probably wouldn't have learned anything by listening in the morning one. We'll see what happens in the press conference. But I'm interested to sort of see whether that continues and whether I get that feeling that he's actually starting to lose some patience here. That he may be sort of subtly saying to John Schneider, have you got that list of contacts ready for who we can go after? And that leads to a follow-up question here from Noah saying, assuming Daboll and Stefanski aren't available, who do we bring in that complements Mike McDonald and the defense we are seeing take shape? Do we need a top defensive end? We'll come back to the defensive end thing in a minute. But I think about it a lot, Jeff. Not because I think it's guaranteed to happen or anything, but I'm interested to think who they could go after. Who are the offensive head coaches who could get fired? Who are the people who are going to be available? I think there are some obvious candidates, but is there anybody in your mind that you think, do you know what? Because I don't think the Cleveland Browns are that stupid to fire Kevin Stefanski, especially after they beat the Steelers in that snow game.
Yeah, I don't think he's on the chopping block. I think ownership is pretty high on him. I think it's the Deshaun Watson thing is they played a lot better since Jameis Winston's got in there. They did it with Flacco last year, so that would be great. Mike Kafka is the name. He was one of the finalists for the head coaching job. The Seahawks wanted to hire him last year. They got blocked, and I think either Brian Daboll keeps his job somehow. I don't know if he's going to, but if he does, I think they'd be more willing to let him walk. I think they're going to need to make adjustments to that staff. So that's one. The problem with that one is I don't know what he brings to the table. He's an Andy Reid guy, which is more of a pass-first historical thing. I don't know. They're not running the ball historically well with the Giants. So Doug Peterson is a guy. He's probably going to get fired. But again, Doug Peterson was more of like an Andy Reid play caller, and he's been more of a pass first offensive line driven guy. They have not been a good run the ball team in Jacksonville. They weren't really in Philly either. So, and again, I think he's at the point of his career. I don't know if he's going to be looking to be an offensive coordinator at this point. He's been a 2-time head coach. So he could just step away, go into broadcasting, something like that. So it's tough because offensive coordinators either getting like a guy like Arthur Smith, who's a fired head coach, you're getting another offensive coordinator from another team who's fired, or you're promoting a guy up. So like Jake Peetz is the passing game coordinator who apparently the organization really likes, but he's a passing game coordinator coming from the Rams who he was working with receivers. So again, is he going to change the mentality of the run offense? He seems more of a Sean McVay. He was a coordinator at LSU and he didn't do particularly well. So it's hard to say. And I don't know. I think Brian Daboll would obviously be a really natural. I think he'd be a really good offensive coordinator. I think New England, if he gets fired, would be very interested in him with Drake May. That would probably be a more appealing job, to be honest. So your guess is as good as mine. I wish I had more insight onto this, but you can go name by name and try to figure out who's going to get fired. But like the Saints had Clint Kubiak, who probably will be on the market. That offense is just after 2 weeks fell apart, and so you look at the coaching openings. Like you're not looking at a lot of super fun name. Mike McCarthy, I don't think is going to be an offensive coordinator. And if he was, I don't think you would want him. The Bears, Shane Waldron, you're not hiring him. I don't know what other names that are proven that would get you excited. I think it's going to be a Kafka or a Peetz or someone like that. That it's another roll of the dice. That's where it gets tricky.
Yeah, it's very difficult until you kind of know who's definitively available. But then if somebody did become, available, can you find a way to sort of go after them and really make sure that you get them? And that it's very difficult. Like you can look at Harbaugh's staff in the Chargers and you think, well, they have a passing game coordinator, they have, an offensive quality, player. Like, are any of these people as a run game coordinator? Like, are any of these people suited to be an actual play caller though? Because that's what you're looking for. You're looking for somebody who isn't just going to come in and help build something. You're looking for somebody who can actually call plays. And I think having that experience of being able to call plays is so important. And every now and again, you get a coordinator who's been around the block. Kyle Shanahan used to be like, bounced around jobs, Kyle Shanahan. He'd be like Houston for a year, Cleveland for a year, Washington for a year. And he'd sort of do all these jobs. And then finally he gets somewhere, and after all those, when he got the Atlanta job, he was not like a trendy name, Kyle Shanahan. And he ends up going to Atlanta. Things click, it works for him. And he ends up becoming the coach that he became. And then you've got somebody like Sean McVay, who was never a play caller, who was like a 30-year-old head coach with the Rams, who never was even an offensive coordinator and has been unbelievable. So it's really hard to sort of sit here and know who is going to be the guy. And you kind of want to sit here sometimes and go, just go and get the next brilliant McVay, Seattle must have appointed the only person who's ever worked with Sean McVay who can't coach. And then the Bears gave him another try like that. But is there somebody else there that you could go and... I don't know. It's so hard to know what to do.
The way they ended up at Waldron is also a pretty depressing story. From what I understand, and that was the Russell Wilson camp guy. That was the year that Russ started to he went on the Dan Patrick show, and he wanted to get into that McVay tree because it was the hot thing. And I heard that he had suggested Waldron, who was not on their radar, to the Seahawks. And I think Pete called McVay and got a report on him, which threw McVay off. And that was kind of like their route. I don't think that's who Pete would have hired, or Schneider. So that's why that was when the Seahawks were at their worst, when they were letting Russ dictate important decisions. And I'm hoping McDonald has a much better eye for offensive coordinator talent. But again, this is why you wrote so many of those articles about wanting to hire an offensive head coach. Nothing against McDonald, but this is exactly the bleak thing you're left with. That even if Grubb was really good, he might have got hired and you end up in this spot next year. And so this is the problem with not having an offensive head coach. There's that guy Tanner Engstrom with Detroit, who was, by all indications, a runner-up for this job last year. He has some ties to Michigan, and he's been part of a team that's run the ball. We don't know what he's going to be like as a play caller. He's never been a play caller at this level. It's a dice roll. And we see Grubb. He's gotten not cowardly, but just kind of silly in run situations and the amount of runs up the middle. So you're going into a bleak forest and rolling the dice, and it's not an easy thing. So you got to hope McDonald really has a good eye for this, because I don't know if this was a Schneider pick. I don't know if this was them kind of coming together, or this was just the best of what they can find. But it looks like they're 0 for 1 on that. And this happens. Pete Carroll did it himself. They fired Jeremy Bates after the first year, and their offense became a lot more reliable as a running team moving from there. So Jeremy Bates was the same thing. He was from the Mike Shanahan tree. They brought him in to run that Mike Shanahan offense, and they were a pass-first team that couldn't run the ball. And so this is one of the lingering questions about this whole thing moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's very strange. Like, Joe Brady is with the Bills. He could well get some head coaching interviews in the offseason, and was basically considered a bust when he went to the Panthers. He was the offensive coordinator when LSU had Joe Burrow and
Chase Jefferson.
Yeah, Chase and Jefferson. So obviously had a great array of talent to work with, but also led them to places like Joe Burrow was not considered to be the number 1 overall pick. It was like a 6th-round pick and then became the number 1 overall pick. And then he flamed out in Carolina and has rebuilt his career. And like, this is the thing, like, there could be somebody out there who has had a crap spell somewhere, has been hounded out of town, and he might be the perfect person for the job, actually learning from experience. But how come you or I, Jeff, sort of sit and go, give that guy a chance? Because if you pointed at someone and they said, like, he was awful at that team, give him another go, you'd be laughed out. You know, people would start saying, what you want about? You don't know what you're talking about. We need somebody has had guaranteed success. But like, there's a lot of teams looking for that right now. And the problem is that the pool of coordinators has gone, because if you are a good play caller, or if you've worked somewhere else, the chances are you'll be a head coach.
Yep.
So then what you need is teams to fire young offensive head coaches and to give them another chance. But it doesn't always work that great. Like, Cliff Kingsbury's been a bit better this year than perhaps I think I expected and others. Maybe he's learned his lesson with some things. He's come back. But then you also wonder if you didn't have Jaden Daniels, would he be any good? Like, it's hard to sort of know what to do with that. We've got a couple of super chats here. Actually, before we do that, the final question with Noah was, do we need a top defensive end? What do you make of that? I mean, I still find it hard. I was watching, had half an eye on Red Zone yesterday. Jared Verse is destroying another game. Yeah. You know, you can always sort of make arguments to say, look at my board and stuff like this. It's always very easy to do that when a player does well. But I thought Jared Verse and Chop Robinson were the 2 best pass rushers in the draft last year. And Chop Robinson's really come along at Miami, but Jared Verse is just on a different level. Like, you watch Jared Verse and you think, I don't care about the sack numbers. I think they may well come, but he impacts every single game. And I thought he was much better. I thought those two were much better than Latu and Dallas Turner, who I had a grade lower on. That is the area where I had Byron Murphy as well, by the way. So that Verse and Robinson were above Murphy. And I know Maffei's doing okay. Hall's tailed off a little bit, but he's still there. He's not liability. He's just not playing very well and having an impact. And Wosu might come back this week and be great. But just imagine Jared Verse playing off Leonard Williams right now. But do they need that type of player, or are they okay without it?
They don't need that. The scheme is good enough where they've been able to elevate guys. And like Baltimore, they didn't have that. They were the number one defense in the league and probably should have won the Super Bowl, but they had Lamar Jackson. But they don't need that. It would make them that much better if they did. It would be a wonderful thing. I found a video of myself the day before the draft saying I really don't want to leave the draft without Jared Verse. Again, I think Byron Murphy's playing well, and I think that is an important position. I think he's doing a lot of things under the radar. Like his win rate is really good, but Jared Verse has been a better player this year, and he has the kind of attitude and the guy that takes over the game and the alpha we've talked about. He's just that whole thing that is so unique, and I think him in this defense would be excellent. And that was the guy we identified in our show as I thought that was the ideal first-round pick. And it's funny, even Cooper DeJean, who I was not high on, I would have hated. He's playing really well. He would have been a good player in this defense. But yeah, Chop's pass rush, I think his either his win rate or he's one of the best, most productive pass rushers in the whole league from like an analytical perspective. And so he's really come on as he's gotten more playing time. Yeah, I think Byron, like if you had Jared Verse in this defense, it would take them up another level. I think if you put Max Crosby in this defense with the rest of the things they got going on, my God, they would be fun. And you see what TJ Watt does to impact games. Obviously, Leonard Williams is playing at that kind of level, but if you paired it up, that's where defensive lines become special. And so they don't need it. They've been a really good defense without it. They have good pass rushers. I don't think they have great pass rushers. I think a great pass rusher, which we've seen has become as hard to find as a great quarterback. They make your defense potential to be special every week. Just the ability to change the game. The Seahawks are not forcing a lot of strip sacks. They're not turning the ball over from pressure a lot of the time. Mike McDonald can scheme up pressure on third down, but again, when you watch what TJ Watt does every week and how much just changes the nature of the Steelers defense, it's such a valuable asset. That's why I loved Jared Verse. He's been a lot better than I thought he'd be in year one, but it makes a big difference. That Rams defense is not talented at all outside of those young players up front, and he's made them very competitive.
Final two super chats. Nano says, just rewatch some of the game. Lamea climbs the second level better than any Hawks guard since J.R. Sweezy, but he gets pushed back. And then he says, if you haven't listened to Schlereth on Wyman and Bob last week, he talked about simplifying the run game. It's superb. We had 6 run plays in Denver. I did listen to that interview with Mark Schlereth. I enjoyed it. I enjoy him talking about offensive linemen and running the football and stuff like that because he speaks like an offensive lineman should speak. And I thought it was a very interesting conversation he had with them. So I would recommend people go and check that out. I suppose he'll be doing his today, is it? I think he probably does his thing, or tomorrow with them. So it'd be interesting to see what he says about this latest performance. But yeah, I mean, they've got to get it. That's the off season, Jeff, isn't it? When we've talked about it, I think it's a bit of a shame that increasingly I think they're going to be pigeonholed to sort of, well, you've got to draft the offensive line. It would be nice to sort of have a little bit of flexibility there. And by that I mean, I am not complaining about the need to take offensive linemen in the draft, but what I'm talking about is at the minute they haven't really got any flexibility. They're going to have to go, we'll take Tyler Booker, for example, in round 1, and then we'll take Jake Majors in day 2, and who's left in round 3? They're almost obliged to draft for the line because it's that bad, and unless they are willing to sacrifice something such as DK Metcalf or Geno Smith, or they're willing to give Geno Smith a massive extension, which I'm sorry, he's not played well the last few weeks. Increasingly, I couldn't do it. I can't do it, Jeff. It has to be a year-by-year thing. And I don't want to get into a Geno conversation when we're right at the end of the stream, but I can't help but wonder what John Schneider's thinking right now. But then what can he do? Like, the only thing I can think he could do is, and I wrote about this a little bit, was, well, you could kind of get Sam Darnold maybe for a cheap contract next year, give him a Baker Mayfield type deal with an out after 3 years or 2 years. So you have 2 seasons, a cheap first season, a more expensive second season, then an out in the third year. But is Darnold, can you see him doing that? I mean, it's not a mind-blowing, exciting arrangement. But then he went, but neither was Matt Flynn, and he signed him. So
no, I don't know. That's the problem. I'm the same boat as you. Like, I know what Gino is. I think Colin Cowherd and Middlecoff called him the best bridge quarterback they've ever seen, which pretty complimentary. They're not usually high on him, but I think it's true. I think it gives you a chance to compete. I don't think you're winning a Super Bowl with Gino. I think Gino would be helped with a better offensive line, no doubt. But I still think you need to find that young guy that you can kind of build the team around. I think you got to take some shots in the draft. I don't think this is the draft, though. I think, like, Darnold would be interesting, but there's going to be a lot of teams in on Darnold. And Darnold with a bad offensive line would scare the crap out of me. So if they can't have the infrastructure to support him, I think Gino, the one thing he's been able to function pretty well is not having a good. I think Darnold with this offensive line would be a disaster. And so I don't think that would work. Maybe if they do both at once, but I don't think Darnold fits a lot of the prospects that, unless Schneider had a really hard grade on him coming out. Yeah, that's the problem. There's
can
not
I just say
options.
something on that? Because when you actually, I found an article that Brady Henderson wrote in 2018, and it was titled, "Why did John Schneider go to Josh Allen and Sam Darnold's pro days?" And as the time has gone on, that has morphed into, why did he go to Josh Allen's pro day? He wanted to trade up for Josh Allen. And I kind of wrote in the article, I wonder if that's because Josh Allen's had an amazing career. And actually, until this year, Sam Darnold hadn't. And they want to just, well, we won't talk about the fact that we like Darnold as well, because he's not been very good. But it does make me wonder a little bit that now that he's had a season where you think, well, okay. I mean, like, if you look at his numbers compared to Gino's, they're practically the same, like same QBR, same PFF grade, same, like, Darnold's got like 2 more big time throws, but he's got like 5 or 6 more turnover worthy plays, stuff like that. They're basically across the board. Their O-lines have played very similarly as well. So it's not as if, there's a massive discrepancy there, but he has a lot more touchdowns. So you can kind of,
he's been better in the red zone,
and he's considerably younger. Like, he's 28 next June. Gino's going to be 35 next year. So it's a 7-year difference there. I am not saying they should do this, but if John Schneider thought, hey, do you know what? I did like him after all, and now he's had a good enough season, which means I can justify bringing him in, and I like him better than the guy we've currently got, and if he works out, maybe this gives us a bit of extra time because he's younger. I don't know, but I think it would be the reaction with the fan base would be, it's toxic a bit now. But it's toxic in all sorts of ways, Jeff. Like, somebody sent me a tweet earlier. People are even, it's one thing after another. Like, like, where are all the people who criticize the Leonard Williams trade now? Where are all the people who criticize the Julian Love extension now? Where are all the people who said that like, it's like, God, can you just enjoy a freaking win, for God's sake? But it would get toxic if there is a section of this fan base who will be, to use your great word from earlier, apoplectic, if they just got rid of Geno Smith and signed Sam Darnold to, let's say, a $100 million contract, and then every game that Sam Darnold played would be, well, Geno would have made that play, or Geno would have done this. He would have to be pretty flawless to escape a never-ending debate about his performance in Seattle as a consequence of that.
I'll say this, though. We feel that online, for sure. But the thing with social media is it is not a reflection of the masses and reality. And so if you're very online, like both of us are, we see this all. We see us all. But if, like, last year, the whole Pete Carroll thing, if you went to the crowd and kind of interviewed people in the crowd, you would have got completely different reactions. And Schneider, I think, is kind of online too. I think he hears what people say. But I don't know if McDonald is. And I don't know if McDonald is the kind of guy who would give a shit about that. And so that would be interesting because I know, like, online we see this war on Geno, and I bet you internally they see it just totally different. Like, Pete's thing was block the noise. I don't know what McDonald's view is, but he doesn't seem to have that connection with what's going on in social media. So sometimes, like, what's said online, and I agree, like, if they did the Darnold thing, for example, every game would be a referendum on Darnold versus Geno. It would be it. If they brought in, say, Jake Peets, who's running some level of the McVay offense, I think you can convince yourself maybe the Darnold thing isn't so crazy. But if they're running that got built up in San Francisco, Kevin O'Connell's running the Rams offense, there might be some interest there. I don't know how much Schneider loved him. I don't know. But one guy who did love him was Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll loved Sam Darnold. There was the USC tie. Even when he was with the Jets, I remember he kind of commented, like, I really like Sam Darnold. Seahawks fans went nuts. But that's not a crazy thought if they go with, like, a McVay guy. I don't think it's out of line. He's younger.
By the way, it was very well known that Pete Carroll liked him because when the Wilson trade stuff was really sort of hitting its first sort of go through, and when Schefter tweeted out the 4-team thing, there was an article saying, by the way, Pete Carroll really likes Sam Darnold. And that came from, I think, the LA Times, and somebody put it out.
Yes.
I've been Sam Farmer or somebody said, just keep an eye on this because they might trade for Sam Darnold if they trade Russell Wilson because Pete Carroll loves this guy. But then I suppose the question is, did John Schneider also love him? Which is possible. I mean, look, he went to the pro day. And it was a really crap pro day from memory. It was raining, I think. It was difficult to sort of watch Sam Darnold, but he went to he went to Josh Allen's. He didn't go to, as far as I'm aware, Baker Mayfield's. He didn't go to Josh Rosen's, and I don't think he went to Lamar Jackson's. It was just Allen. It was just Darnold. So there we go, Jeff. He's definitely signing for the Seahawks in the offseason. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. But it would be interesting. And, well, look, I do think Geno Smith, it'll just be interesting to see what John Schneider thinks, by the way, Geno Smith's playing right now, because I think he's just dipped a little bit in the last 4 games, but there's still time to get back on track as he did at the end of last season. Anyway, we've done enough for today. Jeff, always appreciate your time. Great conversation as always, and everyone appreciates your thoughts on the Seahawks.
Hopefully we have a better conversation in the offense this week.
Hope so. Hopefully another win as well. It's always good talking about a win. Big thanks to Jeff. Big thanks to everybody who sent a super chat in, and to everybody who was watching, great numbers watching live again. Thank you to everybody who contributed in the live chat. Do me a favor. Like I always ask this, so a lot of you are probably sick of it, but it really helps if you could just leave a comment, and just leave a comment in the comment section, even if it's just to say go Hawks. Please like the video. Again, I can see how many of you watching. The likes never match the number of people who watch the video live. So if you could just like the video, that'd be much appreciated. And if you could subscribe, if you like what we do, or if you just want to stay in check, and if you want to hate watch it, then fine. Then subscribe. You will not miss any of the videos that we put out. Let's get those subscriptions up towards 10,000, because about 40% of the people who watch the videos are not subscribed. So it would do us a massive favor if you could just get the subscriptions up. It just means more people will get to find the content and will watch it. There's no financial benefit to more subscriptions for me. It's just, it will get more eyes on it. So really appreciate that. SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis. Going to have the draft article up later this week, and potentially a mock draft. I'm thinking of doing a mock draft this week. So stay tuned for all of that. Big thank you for all of your company. We're back for the next live stream next Sunday after the Arizona Cardinals game. Enjoy the rest of your week. Goodbye for now.